The birthday party was supposed to be perfect. Balloons, cake, and a clown. Mike hired him from a random Craigslist ad for $50. But when the clown arrived, something felt wrong. His smile was too wide. His laugh echoed longer than it should. And when little Emma whispered to her mom, "Mommy, why doesn't he have a shadow?" That's when the screaming started. What happened next wasn't a prank, it was a nightmare that should have stayed buried with the circus that burned down in 1987. And Mike? He just wanted to scare his brother. Instead, he invited something that's been waiting decades to come back. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us your favorite horror topic. We read every single one. Mike stared at his phone, scrolling through Craigslist at 2 in the morning. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing outside. He'd been kicked out of college 3 months ago, failed too many classes, partied too hard, the usual story. Now he was back home, sleeping on the couch, listening to his mom remind him daily that his little brother Danny was the responsible one. Danny's 10th birthday was tomorrow. Sarah, their mom, had planned this whole superhero-themed party, decorations everywhere, a cake shaped like a shield. She'd been pouring herself into it ever since Dad died last year. Mike knew why. Staying busy kept the grief at bay. But Mike? He wasn't good at the emotional stuff. He was good at making people laugh, at pulling pranks, at being the cool older brother who didn't take life too seriously. And right now, he needed to prove he still mattered in this family. That's when he found it. A Craigslist ad posted at 1:47 a.m. Clown for hire, birthday parties, 50, will scare or entertain, your choice. No reviews, no photos, just a phone number. Mike grinned. This was perfect. Danny had been acting like such a little adult lately, bossing Mike around, telling him to get his life together. The kid needed to loosen up. And what better way than hiring a creepy clown to show up and freak him out? Harmless fun. Danny would laugh about it later. He texted the number. Need a clown for tomorrow, 4 p.m., kid's birthday. Make it creepy, but not too intense. He's turning 10. The response came instantly. Mr. Giggles accepts. Address? Mike sent it without thinking twice. $50. Done deal. He fell asleep feeling like maybe, just maybe, he could still be the brother Danny looked up to. He didn't notice the message that came through at 3:33 a.m. after he'd passed out. I've been waiting for your invitation. The next afternoon, the house was chaos in the best way. Balloons covered every surface. Red, blue, silver. Sarah had transformed their modest living room into a superhero headquarters. Danny ran around in his Spider-Man costume, high on sugar and excitement. His friends arrived one by one, screaming and laughing, their parents dropping them off with promises to return in 2 hours. Emma was the last to arrive. She was Danny's best friend from school, a quiet girl with dark braids and huge brown eyes who always seemed to notice things other kids missed. She walked in holding her mom's hand, staring at the decorations with an expression Mike couldn't quite read. "Is the clown here yet?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mike froze. "How did you know about the clown?" Emma tilted her head. "Danny told me yesterday. He said you hired one." But Mike hadn't told Danny. He hadn't told anyone. It was supposed to be a surprise. Sarah appeared from the kitchen carrying the massive shield cake, her face flushed with effort and pride. "Mike, can you get the door? I think I heard someone knock." Mike hadn't heard anything, the doorbell hadn't rung, but when he opened the front door, there he stood. Mr. Giggles. The clown was tall, unnaturally tall, dressed in a vintage costume that looked like it belonged in a black and white photograph. Red and white stripes, oversized shoes, white face paint cracked at the edges. His smile was painted on, stretching from ear to ear, but his actual mouth underneath sat in a flat, expressionless line. His eyes were dark, empty, like looking into a well with no bottom. "You invited me," Mr. Giggles said. His voice sounded like it was coming from somewhere else, echoing slightly. as if the words were traveling through a long tunnel before reaching Mike's ears. "Yeah, come in," Mike stammered, suddenly questioning every decision that led to this moment. The clown stepped inside. The temperature dropped. Not dramatically, just enough to notice. Just enough to make the hairs on Mike's arms stand up. Mr. Giggles walked into the living room with steps that seemed too smooth, too gliding. The kids stopped playing. Every single one of them turned to stare. Even Danny, who'd been mid-superhero pose, froze. Sarah emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "Oh, you must be the entertainment. Mike, you didn't tell me—" "Surprise," Mike said weakly, watching his mom's smile falter as she really looked at the clown. "Well, okay then. Kids, everyone gather around for the show." But the kids didn't move. They stood there, scattered across the room, staring at Mr. Giggles with the kind of instinctive wariness that animals have before an earthquake. Except Danny. Danny stepped forward, his Spider-Man mask pushed up on his head, trying to be brave. "Are you going to do magic tricks?" Mr. Giggles crouched down, his joints bending at weird angles, bringing his painted face level with Danny's. "I know all kinds of tricks, Danny. I know the one where fathers disappear and never come back. I know the one where brothers pretend to care but really just want to feel important again. Want to see?" The room went silent, Sarah's face drained of color. Mike felt his stomach drop. "How do you—" Mike started. "And you?" Mr. Giggles turned to Emma, who stood frozen near the doorway, clutching her mom's hand. "You see things, don't you? You see me for what I really am." Emma's mom laughed nervously. "Kids have such wild imaginations, don't they?" "He doesn't have a shadow," Emma whispered, pointing at the floor where Mr. Giggles crouched. She was right. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, casting shadows of furniture, balloons, children, everything except the clown. Mike's phone buzzed. He pulled it out with shaking hands. A text from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have invited me in." But Mike had never given the clown his phone number. That's when Baxter, their golden retriever, started barking from the backyard. A sound of pure terror Mike had never heard from the dog before. And somewhere in the house, something fell and shattered. The lights flickered once. Twice. Mr. Giggles stood up slowly, his painted smile never changing, and began to laugh. Sarah felt it first, that primal maternal instinct that something was desperately wrong. She moved between Mr. Giggles and the children, her body becoming a shield without conscious thought. "I think maybe we should skip the clown act," she said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "Mike, can you show our guest out?" But Mr. Giggles didn't move. He stood there impossibly still, his head tilted at an angle that made him look less human and more like a puppet waiting for someone to pull its strings. "The show hasn't even started," he said, and this time his voice sounded different, layered as if multiple people were speaking through him at once. "I've been rehearsing for 38 years. Mike grabbed the clown's arm to escort him out, but the moment his fingers made contact with the striped costume, a jolt of ice shot through his body. Images flashed through his mind. Fire, screaming, the smell of burning canvas, children crying for help that never came. He jerked his hand back. "What the hell are you?" Mr. Giggles reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a deck of cards, fanning them out with fingers that bent just slightly wrong. "Let's play a game, shall we? I'll show you something magical." The cards flew from his hands, spinning through the air, and when they landed, they weren't cards anymore. They were photographs. Old, yellowed photographs scattered across Sarah's carefully decorated living room floor. Sarah knelt down, picking one up with trembling hands. It showed a circus tent, massive and striped, with a banner reading, "Gigglesville Circus, 1987. In front of it stood performers, frozen in time, their smiles bright and eager. She flipped it over. Someone had written in faded ink, "3 days before the fire." Another photograph showed a clown, the same painted face, the same striped costume, the same empty eyes. Underneath, a newspaper clipping was glued to the back. Performer suspected in disappearance of 3 children. Circus burns before arrest. "Mom?" Danny's voice was small, frightened. "I don't want him here anymore." Emma's mother was already at the door, pulling her daughter toward the exit. "We're leaving now." But the door wouldn't open. Emma's mom yanked the handle, twisted the lock, pulled with all her strength. Nothing. The door remained sealed as if it had been welded shut. She pounded on it, shouting for help, but her fists made no sound, like hitting a wall wrapped in blankets. "Nobody leaves until the show is over," Mr. Giggles announced. And suddenly he was in the center of the room, though nobody had seen him move. "I've waited so long for an audience. Do you know what it's like being trapped between worlds? Remembered just enough to exist, but forgotten enough to starve?" The other parents started grabbing their kids, rushing toward the back door, the windows, any exit they could find. But every door was sealed. Every window wouldn't budge. Mike's mind raced. This wasn't a prank gone wrong. This was something else. Something that shouldn't exist. "The fire was supposed to end me," Mr. Giggles continued, his voice taking on a dreamy quality, as if remembering something both beautiful and terrible. "But those 3 children I took, their fear, their final moments, it anchored me. Gave me just enough substance to linger. I've been in the spaces between, waiting, watching. And then you, Mike, you sent out that invitation. You opened the door." Sarah stepped forward, her fear transforming into something fiercer. "You're not touching my children, I don't care what you are." Mr. Giggles laughed, and the sound made the windows rattle. "Your children? Oh, Sarah. Sweet, grieving Sarah. Do you know why I chose this house? Why I answered Mike's pathetic little text?" He moved closer to Danny, and Mike lunged between them, his body acting on instinct. But Mr. Giggles simply walked through him, not around, through, like Mike was made of smoke. "Your husband," the clown whispered, crouching in front of Danny. "He made a deal a long time ago, back in 1987 when he was just a boy at a circus, watching the fire spread. He promised me something in exchange for his life, a debt unpaid, and now it's time to collect." Sarah's face went white. Tom was at that circus? Mike's world tilted. His father had never mentioned a circus, never talked about 1987. But suddenly, fragments of memory clicked into place. Dad's irrational fear of fire, his refusal to ever take them to circuses or carnivals, the way he'd wake up screaming sometimes, shouting about smoke and laughter. "He promised you, Danny," Sarah whispered, horror dawning in her eyes. "That's why he never wanted another child after Mike. That's why he got sick so suddenly," Mr. Giggles finished. "Guilt is a cancer, Sarah. It ate him from the inside. But a deal is a deal. And now the boy turns 10, the same age Tom was when he made his promise." Danny looked at his mother, tears streaming down his face. "I don't understand." Mike felt rage building in his chest, replacing fear with something hotter, more dangerous. "You can't have him. I don't need your permission." Mr. Giggles reached for Danny's hand. That's when Mike remembered. His father's lighter. The one thing Dad had kept from before, hidden in a drawer, silver and engraved with words Mike had never understood. To forget is to be free. He sprinted to the hallway, tearing open the drawer, his hands closing around the cool metal. When he returned to the living room, Mr. Giggles had Danny by the wrist, pulling him toward nothing, a space in the air that looked wrong, rippling like heat above asphalt. "The circus burned," Mike shouted, his voice cracking. "Everyone died. Nobody remembers Gigglesville. Nobody remembers you." For the first time, the clown's smile faltered. "Stop. You're nothing," Mike continued, flicking the lighter open, the flame dancing in his shaking hand. "Just a ghost feeding on old fear. And I'm not afraid of you. I'm not carrying my father's guilt. I'm not remembering your name." Sarah understood. She pulled the kids close. "His name was never Mr. Giggles," she said firmly. "There was no circus. There is no clown." "Emma," brave little Emma whispered. I don't see anything. The ripple in the air wavered. Mr. Giggles screamed, his painted face cracking like old porcelain. You invited me in. And now, Mike said, his father's lighter burning steady and bright, I'm forgetting you ever existed. The clown's scream faded to silence, then to nothing. The doors clicked open. The temperature returned to normal, and Mr. Giggles was gone, as if he'd never been there at all. The police found no record of a Craigslist ad. Mike's phone showed no text messages from an unknown number. The photographs that scattered across the floor? Gone. Even Emma, who'd seen everything, started saying maybe she'd imagined it all. But Mike knew better. He kept his father's lighter, kept it close. A reminder that some debts can be erased, some monsters can be forgotten. Sarah never threw another birthday party with a clown. Danny grew up faster than he should have, the way kids do when they brush against something that shouldn't exist. The thing is, we all carry inherited guilt sometimes, promises made by people before us, debts we never agreed to pay. And sometimes the things we invite in, as jokes, as pranks, as desperate attempts to feel relevant, turn out to be far more real than we ever imagined. Mike learned something that day. Fear isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it's the only thing keeping us alert enough to notice when something isn't quite right, when a smile stretches too wide, when laughter echoes too long, when the invitation we send out gets answered by something that's been waiting in the dark, counting the years until someone finally opens the door. The circus burned in 1987. Mr. Giggles died in that fire. But legends don't need to be real to have power. They just need to be remembered. And the moment we forget that line between prank and peril, between fun and fear, that's when the things that shouldn't exist find their way back in. Mike still checks Craigslist sometimes, late at night when he can't sleep. And every so often, he sees ads that make his skin crawl. Clowns for hire, entertainment specialists. No photos, no reviews, just a phone number and a promise. He never clicks on them. He never responds. Because now he knows, some invitations should never be sent. Some doors should stay closed. And some prices for a laugh are far, far too high. So here's my question for you. Have you ever hired someone for a party, a prank, or an event that gave you weird vibes? Ever felt like something about a performer, a stranger, or a situation just felt off? Drop a comment and tell me your story. I want to hear what made your skin crawl. And if you're into these dark, twisted tales that keep you up at night, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. We've got more stories like this coming, and trust me, they only get darker from here. Stay safe out there. And maybe think twice before hiring that cheap entertainment off the internet. You never know who or what might show up at your door. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.